My name's Keith Pond. I'm director of the EFMD online course certification system, which is a bit of a mouthful, and that's it for EOCCS today. What I really want to do is to welcome you to our learning community, because whilst we certify online courses, really the other part of our activity is to build good practice and share good practice through our community. And this is one of the community events, so you're very welcome to that. Today, we're looking at screen presence, and you hear the yells of colleagues of mine. I'm an academic who say, well, I'm not a TV star. Why do I need to know this stuff? But we know the whole world is changing. The demand side, our students are demanding higher quality. If we're going to provide quality education, then this is an aspect of it. How do we appear on screen? How do we make that as good as it can be? So what we've done today is invited in three experts, not completely as advertised, but I will introduce them. First of all, we have Sergey from Jalinga.com, and Sergey offers a service. So he's a provider into this space, but a unique studio setup, which he will display to us. So this is for people, a self-serve studio. We also have Jorge from IE in Madrid, IE Business School in Madrid, and he's looks after the multimedia production. You can see Jorge there sitting in front of his green screen. But this is not the old-fashioned. This is, one of the ways. This is the real sort of professional way of producing high-quality video with videographers and sound recordists and everything in there dedicated to that. And then we've got the voice of an academic. We had expected to have an academic from Grenoble, the École de Management there, but unfortunately she can't make it today. But my colleague from Loughborough, Julie Holland, is joining us. Julie actually was one of the very first of the Future Learn MOOC presenters back in 2014, but since then has done a lot of things in front of the screen. So looking from the perspective of that academic who's saying, I'm not a TV star, why am I needing to do this? But we'll learn some things from that. I'm going to shut up very shortly and ask each of our speakers to introduce themselves and share some ideas with you for between 5 and 7 minutes each. And then we open up to questions. And I very much hope that by the end of this session, you'll be taking away at least one tip, one hint, one extra bit of information that will improve your performance if you're an academic doing this, or can improve the way in which your school or your company or your organization thinks about video. So without further ado, I'd very much like to hand over to Sergey first, if you're okay to fire away. If you're new to Zoom, which,
yes, hello.
Very few people will be new to Zoom. If you click on the speaker view, you'll get the big version of Sergey as his presentation begins. So Sergey, please, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Keith. Good afternoon, colleagues. It's our biggest privilege to be part of the event, so thank you for having us here. Within the following 7 minutes, I will show Jalinga technology potential and our view on screen presence in the digital era. So let's go for it. Just a second. So global education and training expenditure demonstrates gradual growth. And if we compare figures at the beginning of the notice here and compare the digits, the figures that we expect in 2025, we can trace almost triple growth. We also witness advanced technology growth in education, especially in augmented reality and virtual reality segments. It is growing rapidly right away. So to stay afloat, and to create content that meets contemporary expectations, a big dedication and a team of specialists, which includes editors, operators, designers, is needed. Although even after spending a considerable amount of time and money, the final content may not correspond to the expectations and be unreasonably expensive. Our company, Jalinga, produces a new generation of video studios for recording educational content and conducting online presentations and training events. So the studio is a complex of licensed software and hardware. Users can shoot educational content 3 times faster without loss of quality, while production cost reduces up to 40%. And the best take doesn't require any post-production. There is no need to keep a big team of specialists since the shooting process is automated. This is how the studio looks from the inside, from a little bit different angle. So this is a studio camera. This is a screen for spectators' video streams. It is used as a teleprompter display also. This is a screen for spectators' video streams. This is a projector, and this is a wide speaker's backdrop. Together, the display and the projector is used to display slides material for the user. And this is a sensor glass touchboard, which helps user operate the studio and interact with the slides and objects. So this is how the studio looks like. And to start producing content, all you need is just to follow a simple sequence of actions. First, create a presentation. Second, get into the studio. Third, take the right position. So I'm standing right here. And the fourth, start either online session or recording session. And of course, a virtual panel of tools will be of great help. We have a record button here. We have a highlighter, a pencil. You can pick out different colors to work with. There is a recycle bin, a pointer, and a virtual eraser. Jalinga is interactive, and we are interactive in real time. Interactivity implies no post-production. Also, various file formats can be used virtually here and now, so we can use all of them. Now let me demonstrate some examples of how various types of interactive objects can be implemented in educational and training processes. So for example, we can use text objects for humanitarian sciences, like this. We can use graphic objects for exact sciences. We can demonstrate 3D objects for science disciplines as well. So this is a 3D model. We can also interact with this model. We can use animated objects for both humanitarian and exact sciences. So all we need is just to use a pointer, and we can interact with each picture, with each animated object. We can have a number of objects on the slide. We can hide them, we can show them again. A speaker can choose either to stay in the frame or to stay out of the frame. We can demonstrate high-resolution objects also, and using the navigation panel that is on the screen, we can change its scale, we can travel around, and if needed, we can focus attention on some specific details for our spectators or students. We can demonstrate external and internal internet links. We can scroll pages, We can click tabs and follow them. We can also demonstrate screen capture. Just a second. This object is called a screen capture. It helps transfer the main PC desktop image to the slide. So users can open highly specialized programs, technical, medical, IT, management, administrative programs, and of course, educational. So we can also interact with the object easily being in the frame without any post-production. And of course, we can demonstrate audio and video files. Yeah, we strongly believe that a screen presence in the digital education era should be integrated in the advanced technologies paradigm. To cut it short, to summarize it all, we believe that interactivity creates engagement and activity. So basically, Jalinga stands at the intersection of education and entertainment. Put it here. Thank you very much. I've finished my blog.
Thank you, Sergey. And I've got some notes in the chat there. People are very interested in this. If I can say, if you do want to ask, get in touch with Sergey after this, then his contact details can be given to you. You can go on the jalinga.com site to find out more about this. And there'll be plenty of time to ask questions. I'm now going to ask Jorge from IE, who just had a big Extron through him, the big production team. So where's the space, Jorge, for big production teams and videographers? What benefits does that bring us?
Okay. Hey, can you hear me?
Indeed, yes.
Okay, let me share my screen. I'm going to try. Okay. I don't know if it's sharing. Can you see my screen?
Not yet, Jorge.
Wait.
Now we can see it.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so hi. First of all, thanks to Keith, to Teresa, and all the members of the EFMD Global. It's really a pleasure being here and being able to participate in a conversation as interesting as this one, and more for me. So thank you for making it happen. I know it was a lot of work these last weeks, and I really appreciate. But I want to also thank people that joined this webinar, because I think this is a topic really interesting for me, but doesn't matter how interesting is the topic if there is no one to talk about or no one want to learn a little bit more about it. So I really appreciate all of you being here today. So let me introduce myself. This is Jorge. I am Jorge Edo. I am an audiovisual project manager and producer here at IE. IE University, for those that don't know what it is a leading higher education institution based here in Madrid and known for their approach to higher education. Personally, what I really appreciate about it is how they use innovation in the field of education in general. So a bit about me. I've been working in the field, not of education, but the field of arts and audiovisual for 10 years now in many multidisciplinary projects, like an art collective in the north of Spain that has been a cultural reference at a national level, an electronic music group with international recognition, a music events association here based in Madrid, and other projects that I really enjoy till I arrived here 4 years ago to IE. So what I do at IE. So at IE, I work in this department in IE Publishing and IE Excel, where we design, we develop, and we distribute online education and learning materials, mostly. Learning materials such as this one, like simulators, interactive cases. Sometimes we did cooperation with Spanish companies, even international companies. So sometimes it's just interesting topics that we want to give extra skills for students or companies. So here you can see the IKEA collab, the La La Land project, that is a case in electoral law, the Manuel Rodriguez interactive material, the space government simulator. But the thing is that we don't only do learning materials, we also create online programs. As for example, executive education online programs, the MOOCs. I think everybody here knows really what is a MOOC. It's a massive open online course. And we have mostly located in Coursera, that is super famous. And we have there for this one, the Scale Up Your Startup Specialization. But it's not the only one we have there. We have, right now we are creating one that I think is going to look pretty cool at the end. That is based on diversity. We also have this one based in branding and a lot of other topics. So we are not only centered in finance and business, we're centering a lot of different topics. Also, we have the online learning journey, as this one that you can see, the one of Amazon. This is like a more focused online course, more intense. That the idea is to create or to help you create something specific, like in this case, an e-commerce project. So I don't want to take a lot of time, but I want to show you a little bit in video what we do here. So mostly what I really enjoy doing here is working with actors or animators to represent a situation that happens in real time. Like, for example, the Knowledge Lab case is a case that happens, it's a company that started before the pandemic, and how they deal with the pandemic situation is amazing. So we recreate this situation with actors like this one, how they deal with the situation, try to cooperate. So the students get the information directly from the actors, and the dramatization that I think makes it a bit easy to understand. Okay, so another example, we have interviews on location with different companies that show, for example, how they work by themselves to show you how big companies do it. Another case, for example, is this one, is the Challenger case. A very famous situation happened 50 years ago, a big drama, but it's interesting to learn about it. In this case, big data wise, so it's pretty interesting. We make all this dramatization with actors, and actually here in the green screen. So everything is fake, but it's the best way to tell people, to make people feel in the story. So we can see that we go into Mackenzie. Also something we do a lot is animations. We use animations to make people understand better the story. Like this one is the story of Starbucks, how from a small cafeteria they become to a really big company, and how they get over the problems that they have during the growing. This one is the space simulator case that I just saw before. It's a case about satellites in space, and it's really interesting how government work in space. This is a scale-up project that I just mentioned before. Let me show you, for example, we did this one about human resources too. This is the one with Amazon, the scale-up, the growth, the Amazon Despega is called. And we use this. This slide is all recorded mostly in the green screen and on location. We have more animations. With the light board, there is something, it's not the same, but it's kind of similar to the idea of Jalinga that Sergey present. And I think they do it in a different way, but it's interesting that we thought about the same thing, you know, how the classic blackboard in digitalization doesn't exist, and how to create a tool like this one to make the professor talk and use something to write in the air and communicate with the student. It's pretty useful for things like this one. For example, the draw a graph and make the student understand and visualize fast how things are in graph. So that's it. This is the diversity case that I mentioned. It's the one that we are working right now on, and it's going to be up in February. And that's it. So that's it all about me. I want to finish saying that I want to give an input to the topic that we came to talk today. I think something that is really interesting, at least for me, is how education has evolved right now in these times that are so different, so volatile. I think we are in times of the hybrid education, and it's interesting to see how education end up by adapting to the way people consume everything. Because I think right now we are trying to work, at least in our department, to create materials more for people, to these new generations that are super digital, like, for example, Gen Z. Gen Z, this is the kids that are born with an iPad in their hands. So everything is digital for them. They communicate through phone, right? They have their hobbies digital, their work digital. So maybe it's interesting to think how education is not a thing that they have to adapt to the way they have to consume it, but instead education adapt to the way they consume, in the sense that now education is through videos, is digital. I think that's something really interesting that we can talk about. So that's it from my side. I'm willing to talk and to discuss the topics that you want.
Thank you, Jorge. Thank you very much for that very interesting insight into your excellent facilities in Madrid. And I think it just illustrates that you know, there's something here for everybody. And I know there will be questions about, well, my university, my company doesn't have this equipment. We don't like spending money, and that's something we echo through a lot of higher education establishments at the moment. How can we do this? How can we get quality cheaply? Because we're not going to be able to gear up to these huge studios. But not that this is an introduction to someone who did it cheaply, but I'd love to introduce to you my colleague from Loughborough University who stepped in because Natalie from GEM couldn't be with us today, who stepped in because she was one of the first MOOC presenters for FutureLearn, and since then has gone on to help us in EOCCS put together our standards and understand this whole area, but also has done a lot of other work with videos. But she's talking, I hope, from the perspective of the presenter, the person in front of the camera. What do they need to think about? So for the academic who doesn't think they're a TV star, what can they learn? Julie.
Well, thank you very much, Keith, and thank you very much for allowing me to stand in at the last moment. It's a good afternoon, everybody. Well, what a fantastic couple of presentations, and oh, I wish I'd have had that type of technology back in 2014 and a little bit before that. Yes, I was one of the first, we were one of the first MOOCs to be launched through the Open University's Future Learn platform. And it was terrifying, to be quite honest. As an academic, I'd only ever stood up in front of a classroom to present. I was quite used to being filmed in the classroom, but not actually to camera. So actually being that, all of a sudden thinking about yourself as a TV presenter, nobody taught me, nobody told me what to do, and that was quite terrifying. But over the last 8 years or so, I've learned a huge amount, and actually from the MOOC really, which has stood me in good stead for what's happened over the last couple of years, the last year and a half really, when we've had to produce a lot more to camera presentations. What I think is interesting is with both the technologies you've seen, you've still got a person in there that has to present, that has to be on camera, or doesn't have to be on camera, but it's great if they are on camera. And I thought what I do, and Keith gave me a bit of a steer on this, is to think about what were the real challenges that I faced, and what I did to try and help me get through and to make a good job of the presentation that I was doing. Now, the MOOC had an introduction to each of the sections, to each of the units that we produced. So we did actually have a studio at Loughborough University, a very basic studio with a bit of green cloth at the back, and but a proper video camera with a proper cameraman, lighting, proper lighting. But I had no training, so it was very much trial and error and getting it right. And this facility wasn't open to academics very much at all. I think it's overused now, Keith. I think we're doing that a lot more now. But I thought I'd just share with you some of the things that I really thought were the big take-home messages for me, and how I overcame the problem. So I'd always thought, right, I have no slides, by the way, because I stood in at the last minute. So you just have to listen to me. I hope that's fine. But one of the things I realized when I'd done a couple of takes to camera, that, oh my goodness, I waffled a lot. I hope you know what I mean when I say waffle. I talked a lot and went off in different directions, and I thought, we've got to do something about this. So I made a conscious effort to script my talk to the camera, the presentation to the camera. Now that is easier said than done, because it's fine doing a presentation as an academic. If we script something, we tend to write it in a very academic-y way, in a very formal way. And I wanted to change that from that formal way of just reading something to being very natural. And that took a lot of practice. But what I did, I scripted it. And then I basically recorded it back to myself and then changed the text. So it was very much of a speech. Now, today we have the facility on our computer to read aloud. And I always read stuff back to myself, actually, because it gives you the voice then. It doesn't sound stilted. It sounded much more natural. So I'm sure you can all see how it can be made much better. If you're saying have not, if we change that into haven't, it was much easier to read it. Now, I also adopted an autocue very quickly, which helped actually focus me into looking at the camera, because that was one of the hardest things to do. I have never, ever been presenting straight to camera. I'd only ever been interviewed, say for a TV program or something like that, or a video interview for uni. But you were actually having to talk to an audience who weren't there in your studio. And that was tricky. So the autocue actually helped do that. And I'm sure the people that are involved in production have a real problem with academics not looking at the camera. And it is a bit of a problem. So the autocue really helped, but having the autocue in the right place, obviously, so you didn't look like you weren't looking down the camera. Now, that was to think about language. Also, the MOOC went out to a big audience, international audience, and there were probably 140, 150 countries involved. And it really made me realize that I put in a lot of colloquial phrases and words, and that wasn't acceptable. I had to be very, very clear. Talking to you today, I come from Leicestershire, and we have a lot of words that are slang, and you had to be very, very careful. So the language was very important. So take those out, make sure you're very, very clear. Practice on your colleagues, wherever they're from in the world, to make sure that they actually understand your message. I also realized that I spoke far too fast. And I've learned over the years that to really slow it down. And I think academics have a tendency to try and cram in far too much. I can see people nodding here. I certainly less is more, and having a very succinct, short script really, really helped. And cutting away to video and things like that. Certainly what we can do nowadays. I think also thinking about the audience, they are completely invisible to you. And as an academic stood in front of a lecture theatre, you can gauge when that audience has become bored with what you're doing. And that is why I really concentrated on those short pieces to camera. I love the way you can interact with things now. I'm going to adopt all this sort of thing if we can possibly afford it. It's absolutely amazing what you can do now. And I can see it being really helpful to be able to use this new technology. It would certainly have helped me. But not being able to see the audience, that is one of the major challenges for an academic who reads the room. So that's how I got over that. The other thing, probably more of a sort of a fun thing, was continuity and consistency. Dressing the same. I shot a lot of video over many days and making sure I used to have what we called the MOOC shirt. So it was the same thing all the time. And one day I had my hair cut and realized that actually I looked completely different to the last time they'd seen me. So making things consistent can really help your audience as well. So I hope that's given you a little bit of an insight. Since the MOOC, I've done a lot of recording, and particularly things like academics are often called to do presentations, promotion of our programs and courses. And it really helped to be able to do that as well. So it's not just your academic teaching side of it, it's your promotion of your university as well. So that's it really from me. I'm obviously open to questions. I'm sure you've all had similar experiences. So thank you, Keith.
Thank you very much, Julie. And I'll use a Leicestershire colloquium. So thanks, me duck.
You're welcome.
So only you and I understand that. Okay, well, we've come to the part now. You've heard three presentations, talks from different perspectives. And this is what our community does, tries to bring together these different perspectives, because what we know about good online is that you can't do it all just by yourself. You do need these other skills, this expertise coming in. So I would love to invite now any questions anybody has and ask Teresa, are there any questions that are coming up in the chat that, in fact, I think with the number of people we've got in, if we can identify someone and they can ask their question by opening their microphone, if you can help us with that, Teresa.
Sure, and there is already one question in the chat by David Lancefield. Are you here, David, with us still? or not anymore?
Hi.
Hello,
Hi,
David.
So my question, or lots of questions, but I'll stick to one, was to Sergey, which was, how do you actually go about writing on the touch screen, the tool that you use for writing? Is that something specialized to Jalinga, or?
Exactly. This product is licensed and patented. The founders of Jalinga company has developed this product and patented. So what we use to draw virtually is the sensor touchscreen panel. It's right in front of me, so I can touch it.
Yeah.
The glass, which has sensor function, and when I use my fingers, I can open the virtual panel of tools. I can use a pencil, and I can start drawing like this easily. And when I draw, I look 45 degrees on my right to the white backdrop. So I can show this white backdrop once again, just a second. So this one. So this white backdrop, this is where I see everything that exists on the screen. So I see myself here, and I can see the objects of the presentation. So I look 45 degrees on my right, like this.
Mm-hmm.
That helps me to see what's going on, what appears on the screen.
Okay, great, thank you.
If you don't mind,
Thank you for that, David.
I was going to add to Julia's speech in Jalinga Studio, you don't have to work on the camera. You don't have to get used to working on the camera. The camera is hidden here. So the camera is here, you see, and it's behind the display. And what we see on the display is we see our students. At the moment, I can see you, all those spectators who have switched their video cameras on, so I can see you in front of me. So psychologically, it's really convenient and comfortable to communicate or watching everyone in front. So this is also a very good option that we have thought about before. Yeah.
Thank you, Sergey. And I'll just say to everyone, Sergey shared with us that just before we started today, a large excavator arrived outside the building and is beginning to try and demolish the building around Sergey's ears. So if there's some external noises, that's what it is.
I'm sorry.
No, it's not your fault. And we know we have to cope with anything that's thrown at us. Teresa, have you found any more questions there? Because I've got a sort of an open question for our panelists, and it is, that very often, the mantra, what we say to people is keep it simple. Is that something that is, that resonates with you, that the simpler it is, the more effective it is? Or I know Jalinga can have great complexity, and the case studies that Jorge produces, and that can be very, but it's that simplicity. How do we get, what good examples have you of keeping it simple, and what have you done to take the complexity out?
I start, or?
Yeah, please do, if you've got a response. Yes.
Okay, so I mean, the keep it simple, I think, is super particular. It's not for in general, but I think it's more keep it natural. I think something that is really comfortable or easy to see on camera is when people is natural and they don't have problems communicating. But in the sense of simplicity, is complex because, I mean, for lighting, for sound, for everything, sometimes it's a lot of work. But in the sense of talking through camera, the communication, simple in the way of natural, absolutely. I think that's super important. In the case of design, that's something that we talk a lot to make it simple. Sometimes more info that you don't need is a problem. So it's important to keep it simple. But I think only in the way of communication, meaning natural, and in design in general.
Okay, I'm also seeing if our other panelists have responses on that. I know Julie's really talked about that, cutting out a lot of the waffle, another English word there for you to learn today. But we do have some other questions there. Ali, you have your hand up. Is that something you got a question for?
Yes,
Ali
I do.
Syed. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Keith, and thank you everyone for providing us this opportunity. I had a question from Sergey. I'm based in Pakistan, and do you also provide some sort of consultancy services to set up such kind of a studio in a university from where we can then carry on? And if possible, can you give us a slight estimate of the cost that might be incurred for setting up such kind of a visual studio? Because obviously being in Pakistan, we cannot come and record sessions where you are located. So I would really appreciate an answer from them. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. Yeah, we have two options, and our end users have two options to use the studio. So the first one is to rent out, hourly renting. So you just get in the studio to our showcasing studio, showroom, and so do online or shoot video content, or you can have your own studio. And this is what we do actually. This is our main business. To kind of short, we have several types of these solutions, and definitely we install all of them depending on the tasks and pains of the end user, and we teach how to use these solutions also, and we teach how to use these solutions in person when we come and install the studio. We also have internet platforms to train our users how to use and to get acquainted to some more functions. And what we do is we do remote support every single working day. Yeah.
Thank you, Sergey. And we have another similar one. How much space is needed to set up the studio? And perhaps Jorge can tell us how much space you need to set up that marvelous.
Yeah, and how portable it is.
Depending on the type.
Yes, Harry. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to question one more specific is from the space and also how portable it is. So how long it takes when you ship this, or how does it work?
Well, we do it within 45 working days. Basically, 40 days we take for transportation and 5 days to install and to teach the end users how to work in the studio.
And the minimum size?
Well, the minimum size should be at least 15 square meters. So there should be a acoustically prepared room for the studio. So the minimum size is 15. And the biggest studio, actually I am in the biggest studio at the moment, needs around 30 square meters. And what's really important is their dimensions. It should be at least 5 meters in the width and 6 meters in the length, like something like that.
Okay, Jorge, do you have a, if yours is a more traditional video and audio setup, but I mean, I've seen the room. Can you describe the room with the green screen curtain around it and the size there?
Sure. So first of all, I didn't say nothing before because I didn't have the opportunity, but Julie, the presentation of the last minute was amazing. I don't know how you are able to do that. It's a little time. Okay, so the studio, our studio, this one, the thing is that we changed the studio 3 times in the last 2 years because we are right now in this tower in Madrid, and we moved just super recently, 2 months ago. But right now, the dimensions are 40 square meters, more or less, 5 by 8, and we are using the green screen with 2 wall screen. this black cloth to cover the background for using the light board. There is this kind of similar thing that I show in the presentation. That is just a screen transparent to professors to write on it. It's a board. We are using right now for all the recordings 2 lights, two lights for the background, 2 lights for the professor, and 1 light that comes from the back. But in the, I mean, you're asking for the materials or for the space? Because for the space is that just 40 square meters.
Thank you, Jorge. And if I can move to a question we have on, and it's for everyone, but I'll start with Julie, if I may. How long does it take if there is such a thing as an average academic, to get used to using these sort of facilities? You know, what's the learning curve?
I think it depends, is the answer to that one. And I was just thinking about that, actually, and thank you for your kind words, Jorge. It was really kind. It was a very, very quick process for me. I do actually present a lot, and I also have another life. I sing quite a bit as well, so I could project and take my time and do things very clearly, hopefully. But I think a lot of people find that really, really hard. And as I was going to type in, actually, what Keith said about keeping it simple. I think that's the message to get across to the academics who are not used to this very, very quickly. Because academics do have a tendency, like I did very early, and I want to say everything. I always say, you know, I have this saying that I've got a lot to say before I die. You know, I really have got to, but you can't do that. You've got to keep it as simple and as succinct as you can, which is why I went for the scripting, for the natural scripting, and that's hard to do. So practicing that bit, but yeah, I bet it's taken me 10 years to really get it right.
Well, Sergey, if I can sort of come to you, because you will have witnessed a number of people coming into the studio in Shoreditch or Moscow or wherever you've got the installations. How long does it take for people to be comfortable in that setting?
Yes, it depends, of course. So basically, we offer 1 hour to try to get some skills, to gain some skills. And that's generally it's more than enough. So some of our users, they start with some really easy and simple functions, just to switch slides and to do some simple graphs or drawings on the screen, and that's it. And step by step, they just enlarge the number of functions they can insert into their presentation and communication online. So yeah, but I think 1 hour is enough to get basic skills to do it. Yes,
that's good to hear. And Jorge, if I can turn to you, you mentioned that you used actors. I've used actors before as well, with a screenplay for case studies. And they're naturals because that is their job. But, you know, are there some skills from the actors that academics can learn?
Well, I mean, that's difficult. What we do with actors is mostly interpretations of situations. It's not talking as they were professors. So I think for that, we don't need educational background for the actors. I mean, even if the actors are working in a case that is going to be educational, what they are doing, the role is just pure fictional interpretation.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm looking for other questions in the chat. I do have one from Kristen, which I will respond to as we come out of this webinar. But does anyone have any other questions for our speakers today? You like to either put your hand up as Ali did, or put it in the text?
I see the question, do you have training courses at your studio in Shoreditch?
Yep.
Question. Yeah, you can come to the studio. So we have to schedule the visit time, and we are open to welcome you. And so we can do it freely. So the 1 hour, the first 1 hour is free to train, to learn about this technology, and to think about it later.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm looking for any other questions, but I will begin to sort of wrap this up now as we come to the top of the hour. The premise which we used to support this webinar in the first place was that, you know, amongst other things, more and more of our education is going to be online, either completely or blended. It is, once you get into that pattern of working, a very efficient way of delivering things, because if you think about it carefully, you do it once and can use it many times. So you don't sort of, you can keep up to date, or you can do as you know, the Jalinga studio, do it synchronously. So it is live in that way. But what we very often forget as schools, as academics, is the demand side. Our students, they are consumers. They're consumers of Netflix, YouTube, Amazon. The quality that they expect from those visual outputs, those videos, is huge. And they're going to come to expect that from their education as well. So that is something to bear in mind. I have a question from Kristen, which really, I said I wasn't going to say much more about EOCCS, but a big picture question, she says, which is the accreditation of online courses. How do multimedia and interactions come into the evaluation? Well, the answer is, like many answers, it depends. It depends what you're trying to do with your online course. Of course, if you've got a MOOC, asynchronous, it very often is very difficult to have interaction, especially live interaction. But it is possible, some sort of peer review elements in there. But what we look for in our certifications of courses is, does the mechanism that you're using, the communication, the interaction mechanism, support what you're trying to do? I'll give you an example, and it was from GEM. Natalie would have been able to tell us this, that they produce a lot of mobile-friendly output, because their audience is in Africa, where the broadband is not sufficient to take high-quality video. And so, you know, we would look, the interaction is going to be very limited, and the quality is going to be limited, but for their audience, for the market, for what they're trying to do, it is successful. And that's what we look for we don't look for a particular technology or a standard. We look for, how are you managing this? And everyone's answer is going to be different on that, depending on what courses they're running and who for. So I hope that's helpful, Christian, but I'm very pleased to have a conversation about EOCCS with anybody. If you're interested in course certification. But for today, I'll ask one last time if there are any other
Yes, Keith,
questions.
actually we have a professional actor among us who wants to give a tip to the attendees. Lance, are you there?
Yes, I am. So, because I'm also a trainer, professional trainer and actor, so it's interesting to have come from both worlds. So the biggest tip I can give is to breathe. because the fundamental aspects of our voice is our breath. And often, if you're reading text, the full stop is a big clue that you need to breathe. And as you're breathing, it gives time for your listener to absorb what you're talking about. There we are. There's a free tip for you.
Lance, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And it is something I've seen before at universities, bringing in acting coaches to help with individuals' presentations to get them better, because there is this focus on the quality, and the quality these days is judged against, you know, the very best that multi-million-pound budgets of Netflix can produce. I mean, that's not the only analogy. Apparently our students like the box set, so they like to actually, instead of studying a course over 10 weeks, they want to cram it all in one go, and you can only do that through video. So there we are. That's excellent. Thank you very much for that, Lance. And it comes to me really to wrap up today's session. I'd like to thank our speakers, Sergey in Moscow, Jorge in Madrid, and Julie in Leicestershire. And thank you very much for your input. I hope people have gone away with some clear ideas about how they might improve their own practice, or things they might look into for their own organizations, because of the way we've been able to showcase some of this fantastic technology and some of the ideas that are coming out. Hopefully something to fit every budget is there. So thank you very much as well for attending. We had an absolutely marvelous level of attendance, and we'll say thank you again and goodbye to everybody.